SALSASSIN likes to talk about Dr. Clyde Winters.
And Winters obviously likes to talk about Winters as well, as he refers to himself in third person.
Dr. Clyde Winters is an author. He's written a very important book called Atlantis in Mexico.
Nothing important about this work of fiction, unless you are trying to contribute to a struggling author's pocket. This work of fiction couldn't even get published in a regular publisher as no one would take it. Clyde had to self-publish it through Lulu.com.
Dr. Winters is a graduate of the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. At the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, Dr. Winters earned a master's degree in social science, and he minored in anthropology and linguistics.
I contacted the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana. It so happens that degrees are a matter of public record. Universities have to make sure people do not fraudulently claim degrees they never earned. They graciously looked up Clyde Winters for me.
Clyde Winters received a Bachelor's of Arts in Teaching of Social Studies on February 15, 1973, and a Master's in Social Science on June 9, 1973.
Oops, Clyde. I guess they have no record of the 2 minors you claim. Even if I give you the benefit of the doubt, having 2 minors, in other words, having taken the bare minimum basic courses in anthropology and linguistics, would not make you an expert in either field. You don't even have a bachelor's in those arenas. Your specialty is teaching social studies.
Dr. Winters is a professor of education, but he has also taught linguistics. Because of the fact that Dr. Winters has a master's degree in anthropology and linguistics, Dr. Winters taught linguistics at St. Xavier University in Chicago before his present teaching position.
Liar, liar, pants on fire, Clyde. You changed your story even in the same video. What a fraud.
Dr. Winters earned a master's degree in social science, and he minored in anthropology and linguistics.
So which one is it? You have a master's in anthropology and linguistics, or you have a master's in social science with minors in anthropology and linguistics. A master's and a minor are not the same thing. Or, as the records office says, you only have a master's in social science. I think I will believe the records office more. As for your linguistics claim, why are you so fraudulent? You taught linguistics for educators. This is an education course for people who teach to people who speak English as a second language. You still teach the same course at Governor State University as a lecturer, not even a professor. It is part of your education curriculum, not evidence of some expertise in linguistics used for deciphering any language. It is a basic course on syntax and morphology so that teachers can teach to ESL kids. Nice try.
Dr. Winters discovered that the Olmec speak a Mande language.
Ah yes, your so-called translations of chicken scratch you claim is Olmec writing next to actual, Maya, writing. Funny how you can arbitrarily choose lines and ignore others to see a supposed Mandan, Vi writing that does not even resemble anything truly Vi.
Although the Olmec look like Africans, they do not look like Mayan Indians and other ancient Mexicans.
Of course we already have shown that this claim of Clyde's is completely false. All one has to do is look at all Maya group sculptures, not just Yucatec. Among the diverse faces, you will find the same diversity of the Olmec, as they shared similarities to the ancient Maya to modern natives.
Dr. Winters, he's also made presentations at many conferences across the United States.
Clyde, Afrocentric conferences do not count, so let us address your presentations at your local Central States Anthropological Society, a subdivision of the American Anthropological Association.
These conferences were places where Dr. Winters showcased his research on the Olmec people.
Every one of those links is a Central States Anthropological Society link. So I communicated with someone at the organization to find out a little more about these presentations. It seems that the CSAS is a very welcoming organization that lets students and other non-traditional researchers do presentations if the topic is somehow related to anthropology, and the presenter pays the fees. That would include hyperdiffusionists and Afrocentrists, who, while making fringe pseudoscientific claims, are still making anthropological claims, whether accurate or not. Having a presentation here does not mean much. In fact, I was told
a CSAS presentation could be proposed as part of an organized session, or as an independently submitted paper, in which case the program organizers assign the paper to a suitable session, and may or may not have anything to say about its quality. In other words, our peer reviewing standards are not so high as to exclude students or avocationist researchers. Being listed in a CSAS program is no guarantee of the quality or credentials of the presenter.
So what is an avocationist? Someone who practices an avocation. What is an avocation? The dictionary defines it as something a person does in addition to a principal occupation, especially for pleasure. A hobby. So what would be an avocationist researcher? A person who is an amateur researcher who does it as a hobby, not as a career. That defines Clyde and his Afrocentric pseudoscientific studies to a T. And as an avocationist he was allowed to do small presentations at the CSAS, so long as he paid.
Lesker, who's done considerable research on the Mexican genetics, noted that, and I quote, "The amount of black ancestry in the East Coast mestizos is striking, but agrees with historical data, and the simple observation of the number of black people who live in these areas. In addition, although not qualified, the same must be true for the West Coast, because the amount of HBS and GSPD deficiency present there is similar to what was found on the East Coast, and also has historical support."
Clyde is trying to argue a strawman here. Lesker, who did this study in 1996, explored ancestry in both indigenous and mestizo populations in Mexico. No one is denying that there are coastal mestizo populations in Mexico with African admixture. But in the indigenous populations it is much lower in diffusion and individual levels. My images were of indigenous populations, not coastal mestizos. Let's look at what Lesker really states.
First, Lesker sampled 9 indigenous populations, the Chol, Chontal, Huasteco, and Totonaco from the Maya groups, Mazateco and Zapoteco from the Mixteco groups, and Cora, Huichol, and Nahua from the Nahua groups. Second, Lesker sampled 11 mestizo populations, El Carmen, Paraíso, Saladero, Tamiahua, and Veracruz from the coast and Mexico City, Puebla, León, Mérida, Oaxaca, and Saltillo, from farther inland. And only 2 indigenous groups were even tested further for African ancestry because the others were completely homozygous lacking HBS, sickle cell anemia. 3 individuals were found heterozygous for HBS, 2 Chantal and 1 Cora, so they tested those 2 populations for African admixture as well. This means that of the Mayan populations, the Chol, Huasteco and Totonaco showed no African admixture. Neither did the Mazatecos, Zapotecos, Huichol and Nahua. And of the Chol and Chontal, only 3 individuals. Where is Clyde's supposedly heavy African admixture in Indians? The amount of black ancestry in the East Coast mestizos was striking but agreed with historical data and the simple observation of the number of black people who live in these areas. The same must be true for the West Coast with similar genetics and historical record. So we have Lesker clearly stating that the heavy admixture found was only in coastal mestizos, not indigenous populations. Of the indigenous groups, the Chontal only had 5% African admixture, and the Cora, less than 1% at 0.8%.
Let me remind you that I have used images from indigenous populations, not mestizo. Indigenous populations such as the Huasteco, Huichol, Nahua, etc. Even artwork, as in the case of the Totonaco. All with 0 African ancestry, as verified by the very genetic test Clyde loves to quote. That of Reuben Lesker.
Among Indian groups, Lesker in 1996 found among the Chantal, they had 5%, and the Cora 8% African admixture. This is very interesting because the Cora Indians, they have not lived in an area where African people were slaves.